Hello and welcome. My name is Céline, and today I'm back with a new knitting podcast episode where I'll be sharing my most recent finished objects, works in progress, and yarn acquisitions. My latest podcast episode dates back to over 2 months ago. Granted, I've shared different types of videos in the meantime, but I feel like I've accumulated so much fun stuff to share with you today. So I predict this episode's going to be quite busy. First things first, I'll talk about what I'm wearing. So this is the Winnie sweater, which is my first ever design. As much as I don't like the cold, I'm actually quite happy that it's cold enough so that I can wear this again. I also love brown for fall. It's just my favorite color. I love it so much. This piece is knitted top down seamlessly with a contiguous saddle shoulder construction, which I think is very elegant. It's entirely stockinette. There's no ribbing on it at all. The pattern includes a special non-rolling edge technique to stop the stockinette from rolling. So we have that on the mock neck, on the bell sleeves, and also on the body. The yarn I used for this version was the Issier Soft in the shade E8S. By the way, I didn't have a really good place to clip the mic, so we're just gonna have to deal with the mock neck kind of plopping forward. I will leave the link for the Winnie sweater in the description box alongside all other links for everything I'll be mentioning today. I think we've covered everything for the intro, so let's head on to my finished objects. I made these. This is my favorite thing that I've made since I was born. These are the Songbird Mittens by Erica Hoysa. It may not be the correct pronunciation, I'm sorry. These are the palms, and that's the design on the thumb and on the inside of the thumb. I know I have a whole YouTube channel dedicated to knitting, so that must mean I like knitting, but I just want to emphasize that lately I've been enamored with knitting, and I'm sure that this design just made me fall in love with knitting even more. It was my first colorwork project ever, which was a bit intimidating, but I'm glad to say it's actually easier than it looks. It is so much fun. What surprised me the most was that I was glad to be knitting the second one. I really struggle with sock knitting. I can't be bothered to cast on the second sock, but I was looking forward to doing it all over again for the second hand. I'm so ready to be sitting on the tube like this so that everyone can look at my hands. And rest assured, I'll be the girl with the best mittens on that train. Yes, this project turned out to be easier than I was expecting. Granted, there is a lot of chart reading, you do have to pay attention, but I feel like once you get in the flow, it becomes a little bit more mindless. I was so scared I was gonna mess everything up and not notice, but I was surprised to see that noticing mistakes came quite naturally. The reason behind this is that every row connects to the one before and the one after. You've got so many reference points to check against whether you've knit something correctly or not. Obviously, there are going to be exceptions to this. For example, in my second mitten, I messed up one whole round and I didn't notice until I finished the actual glove. And I was like wearing it and I looked at it and I said, that stitch is not meant to be there. And then I looked further and there was another one and another one. There were like about 4 stitches that were off. So I just ended up doing duplicate stitch, which is not my favorite, but it ended up fixing it and no one can tell. The pattern was really clear. I was never stuck. There was never a point where I looked at it blankly, wondering what to do next. It was a very smooth experience. I went for a deep dive in my stash looking for the perfect yarn couple for this project, and I ended up settling on the onion nettle sock yarn for the white. For the pink, I had this random skein that I knew was Cardiff cashmere, and it came from my friend's Karen's stash when she gave me some of her extra yarn that she didn't want anymore. I just didn't know if it was Cardiff Cashmere Small, Cardiff Cashmere Classic. There was no label. I didn't know the shade name. Initially, I thought it was the small, but I actually realized is the classic, and I'll put the number on the screen, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I'm so happy I went for the magenta. The only thing that I sort of regret about the yarn that I used is that I paired some soft cashmere with a sock yarn, which is a bit grittier. So the softness of the cashmere gets lost, which is a shame. But at the same time, I really wanted to use up my stash. I didn't have any white cashmere. I didn't want to use any other color. and that's just what worked at the time. I also wanted to mention that I used mini circulars or sock needles for these mittens, except for the tip of the mittens and the thumbs where I used double pointed needles. I really wanted magic loop to work for this, and I tried it on the cuff of the first mitten, but as a new colorwork knitter, it was really hard to maintain good tension when I ran out of stitches on my needle, and then I would have to pull up a loop and rearrange the cable. I would leave the float too tight and then it would create a dent and it wasn't coming out nice and even. So I ended up unraveling and just doing it on my sock needle so that it would be all continuous. The downside to sock needles is that the needle is so short, you've got no needle to rest your hand on, so it is a bit uncomfortable. I ended up getting used to it, but it was actually so nice when I moved on to DPNs for my thumbs and the tips of the mitten, because in that case I had needle to rest my hand on. Although on the DPNs, it was so hard for me to manage the float tension when I moved from one needle to the other. So my thumbs are definitely not perfect. I don't know if you can see, but right here was where I moved from one needle to the other. And then I was pulling my float too tightly and that kind of created a dent. It was way more noticeable before I blocked it. Now it's flattened out a little bit. And it's also something that no one would notice except me. It's like such a little detail. I made sure on the second thumb to leave the floats nice and loose. I did catch my floats for this. I believe there was no mention of catching floats in the pattern. Also, looking at the designer's sample, it doesn't look like she was catching floats. You can kind of see the pink floats caught in the white yarn, which is not my favorite thing in the world, but there was one float that I forgot to catch, this one, and I sometimes get my fingers caught in it, so I wonder if it would be ergonomic to never catch your floats for this. If you've made this, let me know if you've caught your floats, and if you didn't, how is it just putting this glove on? Is it like seamless or do your fingers get caught? I feel like I've been talking about these mittens for 2 hours. I just had a lot to say about them, but long story short, you should make them because how could you not? A finished object you may have seen in one of my recent vlogs is the Orbit hat by Rose Knitwear. This was another project that took me out of my knitting slump, the major knitting slump I was having over the summer. It was a one-day project, instant gratification, so fun to work it up because the yarn is so chunky, the stitch is so interesting. I can always count on Rose Knitwear to get me out of a knitting slump. She just uses the most intriguing and interesting stitches that make the knitting experience feel new. It's almost like you're knitting for the first time, which is a feeling I seek all day. I'm so happy to say that I used some more yarn from my stash. So the green was one hank of Juniper Moon Farm Harriet Great, and then I had this leftover skein of Drop Andes in the cream color, and it is so meant to be because they are plied the same way. See how the yarn is twisted in the same way? So I love the Juniper Moon Farm yarn, the green one, because it's 100% alpaca, so it's so soft. I think it was perfect to use for this project because sometimes 100% alpaca yarns can really lack structure. They're quite flimsy and flowy, but in this pattern, you obviously work up this thicker stitch and then you intertwine it with the other yarn, which in this case was a bit sturdier, and it just created the perfect fabric for this beanie. I'm wondering if I should place in a couple stitches just to hold up the fold of the beanie because currently it's just flopping down. It's not much of an issue when I'm actually wearing it, it's just holding it up, it flops down. So good to use up my yarn stash. So fun and easy to learn a new stitch. It would be such a good gift, and with Christmas gift knitting season right around the corner, I would highly recommend you put this on your list as an option. Obviously, it's a statement piece. It's not everyone's style. It's not necessarily my style, but I'm feeling quite experimental lately, so I wanted to try it, and it's making me so excited for winter, which is so not exciting. At least I can get excited about funky accessories like this one. The next finished object is a Sadie top. So this is another design of mine, and believe it or not, I didn't have a Sadie top of my own because this is a pattern in collaboration with Beautiful Knitters London Yarn Shop, so the sample is at the store, and I didn't have a Sadie top to keep with me at home. So I obviously had to change that, and I made a Sadie top with what? You guessed it, yarn from my yarn stash. So for this one, I used a nice warm cream color. This is Debbie Bliss Angel Mohair. It's knitted with one strand, top down, seamless, with a pretty boat neck, long, luscious bell sleeves, and I'm so happy that I finally have a Sadie that I don't have to share with anyone. My housemate Margot is also working on her own Sadie top. She's at work, but the project is on the couch. So Margot, I hope you don't mind me showing everyone your beautiful knitting. She's making her Sadie top in this gorgeous soft lilac shade. She finished the body and is now working on the first sleeve. And I love how she coordinates everything. Even her needle stoppers are the same color. She is a lilac queen. All right, so we're done with the finished objects. Let's move on to the works in progress. If you follow my Instagram, you may have heard me talk about the Knit and Note app. So a bit of background about this. I've been on the search for a good knitting app that could organically integrate into my knitting process for the longest time, and I found it. It's the Knit and Note app. It's a free app for your phone. It's also for your desktop as well. I'm so happy and grateful that the Knit and Note team are sponsoring this video, but I just wanted to show you how I use the app because it's been such an integral part of my knitting process. So when you open the app, it welcomes you with a yearly overview of your projects. I've only started using this in August, so I've yet to kind of log back in all the projects from the beginning of the year. I love to journal about each individual project that I'm working on, adding all the details that I will for sure forget within 2 days. So, you know, the size, the needle size, the yarn quantities, etc. I love using the row counter because I'm also so forgetful. Honestly, my favorite thing about this app are the tools. So they have the yarn calculator, which helps you calculate how much yarn you need if you're not opting for the suggested yarn in the pattern. But also they have a ruler. Honestly, the times that I've been in the tube, in the train, desperate need for a ruler. You get it in centimeters, in inches. Thank goodness for that feature. But yeah, you can log your yarn stash, your needle stash. I have the premium membership, which also gets me special discounts on their shop because they sell yarn, needles, and accessories. But overall, the Knit and Note app has been a really good companion to my knitting, so I really recommend it. A project I've been working on for a while is overflowing in this box. So this is a Kit Couture kit for the Hirschholm bomber. This is what it looks like. It's so messy. I'm so sorry, but I was working on it last night. I'm basically nearly done. So I've knitted everything I had to knit for this except for the collar. The reason being is that the collar can only be added after you assembled the different panels, which means that this involved a lot of sewing, and I'm not a sewing girl. I love the idea of machine sewing, but hand sewing, I just don't enjoy doing this. I have sewn both arms, which, despite me, really not enjoying sewing, I'm actually so proud with how I seamed up the arms. Like, isn't that neat? The only other time I had to seam stuff together was with this garment made out of one strand of mohair on like 6mm needles, so the gauge was loose. And in that type of fabric, the stitch definition is not great, the fluff is everywhere, you don't really understand what is what stitch is which, so my seaming was questionable. In this case, with the Hirschholm bomber, we are working with the Kit Couture Highland wool, which has really good stitch definition. It's got some nice structure. It's very forgiving, even if your tension is a bit uneven. So as far as seaming goes, this is the easiest that I could be presented with. So I'm very grateful for that. You really know what's going on when you look at the stitches, you know where you have to go into. I was really worried about the sleeves and how the increases were going to look once I seamed them together. But in reality, the increases turned out to be quite helpful in making sure that I was constantly matching both sides, because every 6 rows or so, there would have to be an increase on both sides. And if there wasn't, it meant that in the previous 6 rows, I had done something wrong. So it was actually a good way to avoid getting all the way to the end and realizing that the sides don't match. This is where we're at with the body. I have joined the front and back panels. First time using the 3 needle cast off, which was very, very easy. Very nice alternative to mattress stitch, I think, especially if your front and back panel are like 2 different colors. And it doesn't create a big bulk on the wrong side, which I really enjoy. Now I just need to set in the sleeves, which will probably be the hardest thing of putting this thing together. But you know, we're watching Gilmore Girls while we're doing this, so we're okay. Something else I wanted to mention is that I actually exchanged this quadrant for a different color. So originally this color is intended for this section, but I don't know, there's something about this shade that I'm not the biggest fan of, so I decided to put the burgundy, which I think fits it super, super nicely. Also, first time doing intarsia. I had never done it before, so that's pretty fun. I love checking off on my list of skills, like new techniques that I've never tried. Generally, this pattern is actually quite simple. It's definitely like advanced beginner friendly, I would say. For the most part, it's just flat, straight knitting. What I did notice on the pattern is that it provided a lot of the essence of what you were meant to do, but didn't explain things too much in detail. So that might be a little bit of a hindering factor if you're a beginner. For example, with the increases up the arm, it didn't tell you what increase to make, kind of was up to you. What I ended up doing is I went on the Knit and Note app because they have a lot of video tutorials. So I saw what increases could maybe best work for this situation. So those videos were really helpful. Another thing, when it talks about the assembly, it just says, set in the sleeves between markers and join side and sleeve seams using mattress stitch. So that's kind of it. Even the way you are meant to cast off the front panel to shape the neckline is not written in the greatest detail. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're a complete beginner. There is a lot of yarn left over in this kit, and I could make a whole entire vest probably using it, which I actually will. I'm really, really keen to cast on the Olymp vest by Le Pool, and this would be absolutely perfect for it. So I'm pretty sure that's what I'll end up using this yarn for. This kit also comes with a set of snap buttons and a ribbon as a button band, because the design is meant to have a little closure moment, but I'm just not gonna go for that. I'm just gonna leave it open with no buttons. I prefer the look of that better. I've seen how it looks online with the buttons, and I feel like it pulls at the fabric a bit weirdly. One last consideration I'll make about this piece is that I know that the yarn pills pretty bad. The reason I know this is because I've worn a sample of this for a day and it pilled pretty bad. But I was obsessed with the design so much that I didn't care, and I still got the kit, and whatever, I'm just gonna depill it after every wear. Just FYI, this Kit Couture Highland yarn is distributed by Filcolana and is the same yarn as the Filcolana Highland wool, I think it's called. If you were planning on using that Filcolana yarn, those are my thoughts on that yarn as well, because it's the same yarn, so it's very pilly. Very excited to finish this and block it and show you the final results. Moving on to the next work in progress. Right after I cast off my Songbird mittens, I knew I became a mitten girl and I just wanted to make some more. So I did. So these are the Frost mittens by Inger Berg. And yeah, this first one is finished and blocked, and I'm just working on the second one. This is what it looks like on. So it has this really pretty flowery snowflake, and then it has smaller snowflakes on the palm. This is the inside of the thumb, and that's the outside. It has a really pretty cuff design, and I love the single knit stitches in the middle of those circles. It looks like little hearts, which is so adorable. And then I also added 2 Latvian braids to border the cuff. This wasn't in the pattern, but I was heavily inspired by Handmade by Florence. And Florence and I were actually saying on Instagram how we're happy to see that we're not the only ones knitting mittens when it's not cold enough for mittens yet. And another idea that I got from Florence, very inspired by her always, she's amazing, was to make the second mitten opposite colors. So I'm just switching everything. So you can see how that's turning out. I'm very curious to see how the rest of the hand is going to turn out. I'm so excited. This purple and gray color combination I am so in love with. And it's crazy because it's a combo that I wouldn't have gone for had it not been my only choice, basically. So the story behind that is I was gifted the most beautiful yarn package from Holst Garn, and they sent me individual skeins in different colors from each base that they carry. So I could only use them for single skein projects or maybe colorwork projects. The only problem was that all the shades had similar saturation, so they would have gotten lost had I used them for colorwork, except for the purple and the gray had enough contrast. It was very convenient that they sent me the same color across a couple of yarn bases so that I could hold them together for this project and make a dent in 4 skeins. For each color, we have 1 skein of Haya, which is 70% baby alpaca, 20% mulberry silk, and 10% yak. So as you can imagine, it's so silky soft. Just to make it even better, I paired it with Lucia, which is a mohair substitute. So this has 42% baby alpaca, 35% mulberry silk, 13% merino, and 10% yak. And I kid you not, guys, my mitten is so soft. Oh my gosh. It's so scrumptious and delicious, and I really, really want a sweater in this yarn combo. Eventually I'll get to it because it's just so, so good. The purple Lucia is in the shade Celeste, the gray in the shade Shadow, and then the other Haya yarn, the purple is Ballerina, and the gray is Oyster. With my songbird mittens, I forgot to mention how I actually do the color work. So I'm an English thrower. I know that a lot of English throwers will work one color and then drop it and then pick up the other one. I have recently been practicing my continental knitting, and so I felt confident enough to actually work continental with one color and then throwing with the other. And that worked out really well. Granted, my continental is looser than my throwing, and I feel like you can definitely see that in my songbird mittens. Some white stitches are a bit bigger than the pink ones, but I like to think I'm improving. This sort of thing comes with practice, and I'm happy to practice. One thing that I should mention is that I cast on the second mitten at 1 a.m. one night, and then when I picked it back up in the morning, I couldn't remember which one I'd used for my dominant color, so I switched. Make sure you always keep the colors in the same hand and never switch them, because it will show in your project. Also, mittens are such good gift knits. They are so fast. You can make a pair in about a week, but then they look so special and impressive. These are the sort of items that I envision being gifted down the family tree. You know, I'll just give this to my kids and then they'll give it to their kids. And then my great, 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 great grandkids will have Aunt Celine's mittens that she hand knitted when she was 25. Like, you know, it's super cute. On to the next segment where I show you my yarn acquisitions. So in the last video, I went to the Unravel Yarn Festival, which, by the way, that was my favorite vlog. I had so much fun that day and I had so much fun editing it. Honestly, it's my favorite video on my channel, I think. But yeah, I did a yarn haul where I showed you all the things that I purchased. I'm not gonna go into detail about those, so I'm just gonna like flash show you them right now. I got a set of hand-dyed yarn from the Knitting Shed to make some more mittens inspired by the water lily painting by Monet, a rainbow skein from No Moths Allowed, and a beautiful hand-dyed hank from Nellie and Eve. This is their Dale's 50/50, and it's so pretty. Onto the things you've not seen before. So I did mention that the Knit and Note app has its own shop. They actually have their own branded yarn. So they sent me a sweater quantity to try out, which is so incredible. Look at this color. I picked this shade, which is Lucky Lilac, or also number 105. This is their Highland wool. It's 100% pure wool from Peru. It's DK weight 137 meters in 50 grams. Recommended gauge is 22 stitches. I picked the DK because I thought it would be the most sensible option, seeing that I didn't know what pattern I was gonna choose for this. I feel like for sweaters especially, DK is a very, very common gauge, so I wouldn't really struggle to kind of find a purpose for it. I don't know why this color reminds me of Winx, which is a cartoon I used to watch when I was younger. It was an Italian cartoon, but I feel like it did cross some borders to other countries. So let me know if you also watched Winx, and let me know which Winx you used to be when you were younger. I used to be Bloom. But yeah, I don't know, random thought. I'm envisioning this yarn for a dreamy cabled cardigan for spring. Something else I got in the package was this cute little tape measure, and it's got the Knit and Note logo embossed in this faux leather casing. And yeah, and then they also added a little box with 2 cute stitch markers with these little spheres. As I said earlier, I did receive a beautiful package from Holsgarn, so I wanted to show you the other skeins that I got alongside the ones that I'm using for my mittens. One that stood out to me and is quite different from all the other yarns in here is their Cielo. This is 42% alpaca, 42 merino, and 16% polyamide. And this is 125 meters in 50 grams, which is exactly the same. Like, it's an exact equivalent to the Issier Soft that I use for the Winnie. And I've always really wanted a white Winnie. We'll see. It's so pretty and soft, and it's so airy. Like, it literally looks like whipped cream. So this is in the shade beige. I have another skein of Lucia, which is the same yarn that I used for my mittens, the one that I called like a mohair substitute. This one is in the shade Cactus, a gorgeous sage green, which is one of my favorite colors. It's so pretty. Another sage green I got is this in their yarn base called Coast. This is the shade Olive. It's 55% lamb's wool and 45% cotton. 50 grams, 350 meters. You got loads in there, and it's so pretty. I love how the skein looks in this one. It's so cute, and I love the label. Their most famous base is Super Soft. I have it in 2 shades, Silver Gray and Sweet Pea. I love Sweet Pea because it's actually composed of a mix of purple and yellow fibers. So it's so interesting up close, and it's got an incredible dimension. This is 287 meters in 50 grams. They use a waxy substance to spin the yarn, and it washes off when you block it, and the yarn is meant to really bloom and like change and transform. So I'm very excited to work this up and see how that transformation happens. Another yarn base to try is their Tides base. This is in the shade Seagull. It has the same meterage as Super Soft, but instead has 70% wool and 30% silk, which is so dreamy. Lastly, they sent me 2 shades of their Titicaca, which is 100% pure thin alpaca, and I got it in this pink, which is heather rose, and then silver gray. So we see a common theme with the color palette, which makes it easier to use them all together. So I'm very excited to kind of come up with different projects to use these up, but they're so beautiful, and so far I've had such a good experience with the Holsgarn yarns, so I'm just very excited to try these other bases out. The next acquisition isn't yarn, but it's equally exciting. It's a really pretty gift that I got from Karen from Beautiful Knitters, and it's the 2025 Knitter's Year Weekly Planner Built for Crafters by Lane. It's a beautiful faux leather cover agenda specifically made for knitters. And listen, I'm a pretty techie girl. Like, I love using my laptop for different things and my phone. Like, I love using technology to make my life easier and faster. One thing I cannot get on board with, however, is an e-calendar. I cannot plan my life on my phone. I don't know why. It just doesn't work with my brain. It's like that format isn't compatible. If I have to do something, it's not happening if it's on my e-calendar. I don't even know how to put stuff on my e-calendar. This is perfect for me to organize my life and my knitting all in one. So the premise of this agenda is obviously a weekly planner where you get your week at a glance, but then it tells you where all of the yarn festivals are. One that I know I'll be attending is Unravel in Farnham, UK. And that's on the weekend of the 14th of February. So it literally says 14th to 16th of February, Farnham, UK, Unravel. So in red is all the yarn events that are happening. I know I'll get major FOMO seeing all these dates that I won't be able to attend, but I wonder if this will kind of encourage me to travel a bit more, because I don't love traveling. I just like staying at home with my things. Knowing about a yarn festival is a good excuse to plan a little trip. Who knows? We'll see if it happens in 2025. I think it should. I think that would be a nice thing for me. Some extra nitty bits at the end of the agenda. We have a list of abbreviations. needle size conversion, so in millimeters, US and UK, Canada sizes, so that when you're traveling, you know what to ask for when you're at the local yarn shop. Same goes for yarn weight, so how they are called differently in the US, UK, and then how that translates to yardage. We also have a spread of basic techniques. My favorite, the ruler. We have a nice space for finished objects and a cute list for cast on wish list, and we have the skeins as bullet points. The only complaint I have about this is that it's only one page. Like, who has a 10 item cast on wish list? More like 100. It is followed by lined paper, so you can put your wish list there. Lined paper and then some blank paper for some nice sketches and designs and whatever you want it really. But yeah, check it out at Beautiful Knitters. Once again, I'll leave the links to everything down below. The last thing I want to show you is my new Shakti mat. If you don't know what a Shakti mat is, it's this. It's a mattress full of these spiky discs that are meant to resemble like a bed of nails. And you're supposed to lie down, and it's acupressure and it gets your circulation going. And I love to use this before I go to sleep to untense my back, because I get so tense when I knit and I start getting pain everywhere, neck pain, back pain, all of it, because I knit like this. This really helps me to relax my muscles after a long knitting session, or even after a long day out or at work. And it also helps my mind relax. You might be able to tell from my videos, my brain goes really fast, and I just don't like stopping it. Even if I've had the most tiring day of my life, I still don't want to go to bed. So this really puts me in the mood for that, and it's so good for my knitting pains. They also have this really pretty plush pillow for a headrest, and you can get the acupressure on there as well. And yeah, Shakti has just come out with the premium line, which is so nice. I find that the discs adhere to the body way better because I also have the original Shakti mat, but this one is way more comfortable to lie on, and I think it's just more ergonomic, if that makes sense. I'm pretty sure they're running a launch sale for the premium products of 30%, I believe until the 6th of October. They've also been so kind to give us knitty friends a 10% off discount using the code Céline10 at checkout on the US or UK website. In fact, it's also stackable, so the 10% lasts for the foreseeable future, but if you order before the 6th of October, you'll get a stacked 30%, so overall 40%, which is amazing. So yeah, I love my Shakti mat. It's just such a fun, different thing that I've added to my routine, and it's really integrated well. And now I really hate the days that I'm not able to do it for whatever reason. I love it. I should actually do a little session because I've been filming for too long and my back hurts. As always, let me know what's currently on your needles. This is our Knitty Club space, so I always want to know what you're currently working on while you watch this. Since we finished this talking about the Shakti mat, let me know if knitting also gives you back pain so we could bond over that. Since a lot of the projects I showed you today were using yarn from my stash, I would really like to encourage you guys to do the same and maybe use the comments to help each other out and plan to see what you could make with the yarn that you already have. And yeah, as always, I thank you so much for sticking till the end of the video. I had the best time chatting with you. I'll leave my Instagram on the screen in case you'd like to follow me on there. And for now, I'll say goodbye and I hope to see you in the next video.